I was living below the poverty line. I had no idea of how much I still had to heal from. I had no idea of my own personal power or my abilities or possibilities. I had no idea of any of that. But there was this really clear moment, and I'll never forget it. I was leaning out the drive-through window of one of my jobs, and it was overnight. I think it was about 3 in the morning because we were in between the rush from the late night and the rush of the morning. And I remembered that I could almost tangibly feel that there was something else. There was something different that I was supposed to do, that there was still a whole different life for me out there. And I could almost reach out and touch it, but I just couldn't imagine what it could possibly be. But I knew without a doubt in that moment, even if I have no idea what it is, I have to pursue that. I have to pursue it. I'm gonna go after seeking answers. And I don't even know what that looks like, but I'm gonna keep a really open mind, and I'm going to keep trying new things, and I'm going to find out what this is all about.
Welcome to the Persistence U podcast with Lisbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Lisbeth Meredith is an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and strivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad you're listening.
Malumir Logan, thank you so much for being here today on Persistence U, all the way from Canada. And
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to have you. And I love listening to you on other interviews, so I know this will be interesting. Can you tell us where you're at right this moment?
Where I'm physically, I'm in Ontario, Canada, and we are in the middle of beautiful summer, and we're having a beautiful summer. The sun is shining. The leaves are all fully grown now. It's just beautiful. There's flowers everywhere. It's lovely.
Oh, I think that is so fantastic, especially when you live more northern. You have appreciation so deeply for this summer. I know from more than 50 years in Alaska with the season we prayed for.
Absolutely. And thankfully, we don't get the depths of the cold quite as significant as the Arctic. But you're absolutely right. We live for the summer because we really only end up having maybe 3 months, maybe a bit more of this kind of weather. I do love the autumn. I do have to say I don't mind the cooler temperatures, but there's something to be said for just being able to go and sit outside with a nice, glass of water or a cup of tea and enjoy the great outdoors.
Yes, absolutely. I adore it. And walking. Now, before we get too much into conversation, tell me about the time, because you have a lot of wonderful talk points. I was just listening to some of your interviews this morning as I was on my walk in the beautiful heat of East Tennessee. And anyway, before we get too far into that, can you tell me about the point in your life in which things really took a change? And then we'll move forward to where you are now.
Sure. So, I will say that I've had quite a few moments of, oh boy, things really need to shift. I've pivoted quite a few times on my journey, but I would say a really pivotal moment for me and an initial really pivotal moment. This was about 20 years ago. I was working multiple jobs in small town Ontario, and I was just making ends meet. I was living below the poverty line. I had no idea of how much I still had to heal from. I had no idea of my own personal power or my abilities or possibilities. I had no idea of any of that. But there was this really clear moment, and I'll never forget it. I was leaning out the drive-through window of one of my jobs, and it was overnight. I think it was about 3 in the morning because we were in between the rush from the late night and the rush of the morning. And I remembered that I could almost tangibly feel that there was something else. There was something different that I was supposed to do, that there was still a whole different life for me out there. And I could almost reach out and touch it, but I just couldn't imagine what it could possibly be. But I knew without a doubt in that moment, even if I have no idea what it is, I have to pursue that. I have to pursue it. I'm going to go after seeking answers. And I don't even know what that looks like, but I'm going to keep a really open mind, and I'm going to keep trying new things, and I'm going to find out what this is all about.
Love it. And it was just that moment at the drive-through or doing one of your jobs.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And what did that start to look like for you then? I mean, at that point, had you gone to college or?
No, I had no college education, and I had been schooled at home. Now I have no issues whatsoever with homeschooling. I think it can lead to very high quality learning outcomes if it's done, if it's done well. However, my own living situation as a young person was not a great living situation, unfortunately. So I taught myself school based on the curriculum that we had. So I did have a high quality education. The only problem is I had no piece of paper to prove it. I had completed what would have been considered, advanced level courses in high school, but I had no high school diploma to prove it. I couldn't even get a job at a local manufacturing plant because they wouldn't interview me because I didn't have a high school diploma. And so, yeah. So my options felt very limited, and I really didn't know what opportunities that I really had. But what I did do is, I remained optimistic, I remained open-minded, and I also just started trying out new things. Like I thought, okay, what are the things that I do like? At the time, I really liked makeup. I thought it was not only just, a fun thing, but it was a way of being artistic, of being creative and getting to show that creativity. And so I happened to meet someone who was teaching a television and media course in a nearby city. And so I think it was Wednesday morning after I'd worked an overnight shift, I had had no sleep. I'd worked two other previous overnight shifts and afternoon jobs. I would get up and I would drive to that city and I would sit there on whatever cup of coffee I was on at that point, and I took that course. And I learned different kinds of skills in production. And that's when someone said, well, maybe you could be a makeup artist. And so I actually pursued that for a while. That's actually how I got my first college education. Was I thought, well, I don't know. I need to clearly have some training in this because I have a lot of skills that I've developed myself, but I'm sure there's actual training that I need. And so I found a college close to Toronto. It's a college that does all sorts of technology and arts and performance and crafts. And it's well respected. And I thought, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. I have no idea how it's going to go, but let's see how it goes. And even though I didn't stay in that profession, that was a really important time for me, going and doing that program, because it's in that program that I realized, wait a second, I'm not dumb. Like I'd been brought up, in, like I said, it was a very unsafe living situation. I really believed that I was not capable. I didn't actually think that I was capable of things. And here I was proving to myself, hey, wait a second, if I put my mind to something, I can do things that I set my mind to. Wow. So that was a really important moment. It was a really important moment.
It's so huge because when you're already working a few jobs, a lot of people would say, there's no way I can squeeze that in. But you didn't say, it's impossible. You said, how am I going to do this? How is it going to work? It might not be fun all the time, but I'm going to have to do this best I can. And it paid off. I mean, you started realizing you had a lot of talent. And
Yeah.
this was just step one. That's fantastic. So, and I just recently watched at our local film makers guild, I watched a makeup artist create someone with a car accident look right before our very eyes. There is an art to that that is unbelievable. So what a great skill. Where did that lead you then?
Well, it's interesting because I really thought, okay, this is my career now. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I've worked so hard to do. And I mean, again, I barely slept through college, which isn't good. I'm not suggesting anyone should not get enough sleep. I don't recommend it. But, I worked so hard because I still had to work, obviously, to put myself through school and pay bills. And so I really thought this is what I was going to do. And then there was one month where one by one, all of the freelance jobs I had lined up, they fell through. Now, I do think this was actually, the universe looking out for me in some ways, but I suddenly panicked because it all happened in a week and it was all random, unrelated things. Like none of these people even knew each other, but it was just all these things that all happened at the same time. I realized, oh my gosh, how am I paying rent next month? That's how I was paying rent. And so I thought, okay, what other skills do I have? I need to get a job because I need to pay bills. And so I found a job working as an administrative coordinator and a business administrator at a beauty magazine in downtown Toronto. And because I had that background in beauty, I was able to get that job. And that was a really important time as well, because it was during that role that I realized, this isn't challenging enough in the right ways for me. This isn't challenging enough in the right ways. And I suddenly started realizing, wait a second, there's a lot more career opportunities out there than I ever realized that even existed, right?
Right.
Because I just hadn't had exposure to a lot of different opportunities at that point. And so what that opened up was being, in a city, having, being in community with a lot of folks who had so many different kinds of work and life experiences. And it allowed me to dream a little more. It gave me access to more of myself and my own preferences and my own values. And so I started doing a lot of research and, again, talking to people, keeping a really open mind, keeping an open ear for new ideas. And I came across urban and regional planning, which I didn't even realize existed as a thing. But the huge hurdle to that was it was at a university. Again,
Okay.
I didn't have a high school diploma. I had this college degree, but it was in makeup. And again, right? Like, and this is, a serious program and, the Faculty of Community Studies. And I thought, oh my goodness, do I even have a chance? So I asked the program director that. There was an orientation day, an informational orientation day where people could come and learn more about the program. And I'm sitting around this table and all these people are going, oh, my uncle has worked in, public works for them. My aunt has worked in, and they all seem to know planning and have family who worked in planning. And so, I'd always just rather know. I don't want to hide from myself. I don't want to beat around the bush. I just want to know what I'm dealing with. And so I just asked the program director, I said, I have a question. So I said, I don't know anyone in planning. I don't have any family members in planning. I have a college degree in makeup and I currently work at a beauty magazine. Do I even have a chance of getting in? The other students around the table laughed. They outright laughed out loud. And the director kept a very serious face. And he said, actually, in planning, what we value is an interdisciplinary mindset and approach. We realize that when everyone thinks the same, that's actually a problem. And we value differences in experiences and perspectives. So yes, you have just as much a chance as anyone here.
Wow. Good for
Right?
you for asking the magic question too. That's important.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. And what a beautiful response he had to your question.
Yes, it was very validating.
Oh, excellent. So then how did that next part of your journey help with the transformation and
Yeah. Absolutely. So what I did is that I learned about public service. At that point, I didn't know the difference between the public sector and the private sector and broader. I had no idea what those meant. I didn't know the difference between someone who works in politics versus what a public servant is, and that those are different, right? That you have people who are elected officials, but then you have the people who work long term in public service and they become experts in the area and they're just providing advice based on the evidence and their best advice as opposed to the political whims. I
Right.
didn't even know that that was a thing. And so I learned about public service through urban and regional planning because you can work in that field in both private sector and public sector ways, as well as nonprofit ways. And so I decided, okay, by the time I finish this program, I want to have experience in the municipal government and the provincial government and the private sector. I didn't realize how ambitious that was at the time, but the thing is, I did it. I set that goal. And maybe it was great that I had the naivety to not realize that it was ambitious because then I pursued those opportunities. And by the time I graduated, I had done a short stint as a placement with a private sector economic development firm, decided that, it was a cool experience, maybe not for me. I had experience with 2 municipalities, and I also had gotten a job with the provincial government, which I really, really enjoyed. It was from there, though, that I realized, wait a second, I can actually do this academic thing. It seems I'm good at doing this. I had no idea. I was just this, small town girl who thought, I had no capacity whatsoever. And here I was, wait a second, I can do these things. That was really pivotal for me because it was the first time I pursued further education from there. And I realized when I was working that there was a gap in my skill set. I would watch people who were senior advisors who just seemed to know how to think about complex issues and how to approach them. I could always keep up, but it just seemed like they were magicians. I'm like,
Mhm.
how are you thinking so strategically? And so I pursued a master's degree from there. I got some federal experience after that. So I have a lot of different experiences of public service in Canada. And it was from there and actually working that I realized that actually I am a leader. I love leadership, and leadership is the thing that I'm powerful about. And leadership can be formal or informal. And the fact is that every single one of us is a leader, right? I'm a leader of my own life. You're the leader of your own life. We're each the leader of our own life. And, even if we don't end up in a formal leadership position of authority over anyone else, we're still making decisions every day. And even not making a decision is still a decision, right? A non-decision is still a decision. And that was a huge aha moment for me that I had in those early career years, as I was in informal leadership of myself and of other projects, and started building that leadership mindset and capacity.
That's so exciting. So one step built upon another and another and another. When you look back to your childhood where it didn't feel like your strength was celebrated or acknowledged, I mean, what do you kind of wish that parents would instill in their children that maybe you didn't get?
I mean, I could go on with a very long list if I look at things that I perhaps didn't get. But I think if I think about what are the really important things, I would say that realizing that it's not ever just about any one of us as an individual, that we are connected to other people. And this is relevant regardless of where you work, what kind of work you do, how you do life. We are connected to each other, and the decisions and non-decisions that we make impact those who are beyond us. And I wish that there was more encouragement of kids to realize that, and I think a lot of kids are increasingly realizing that these days. But, I think sometimes these kinds of topics become very values based as opposed to just it's a factor. Like, for example, mycelium, they're like little mushroom filaments. They exist under the ground. They connect trees. So it's one of the ways that trees receive nutrients is through these little mushroom filaments called, like, they almost look like a little network of threads that are under the ground. And trees actually communicate to each other through them, right? So I'm getting a little scientific here, but so bear with me. But the trees actually communicate with each other in this way too. If one tree is deficient in nutrients, it'll send out a message being like, hey, I'm low on nutrients. Does anyone have any spare for me? And the other trees will send nutrients to the tree. So, basic science can actually show us that even if there are not obvious connections between us and others, we do all live in community. None of us, lives completely on our own. I'm sure a couple folks, out there probably feel that, that they're their own person, and I think that that's a separate idea, right? We can be individuals while recognizing that we do live in community. I wish kids better understood that, as well as I do also, and I think that if kids grew up understanding that better, then they would understand why it's so harmful to other people, to treat people like other, right? The whole us and them idea. And, I get that some of that is just basic psychology. It's basic, tribalism, us and them, it's how we developed as humans and survived. But it's not healthy when we other people in some way. And the thing is, we all do it accidentally, right? We grow up in society. We can't grow up in society without, unintentionally absorbing some of that us and them kind of mindset. But that can actually lead to a lot of issues down the road, both for people who find themselves othered, like I often did, or for people who may be part of the we, part of the us. It still affects you, right? For example, in businesses that are not truly opening to people who are other are actually less efficient. They run less efficiently. They're less sustainable overall. They go through more churn. That's not good for anybody, right? That's not a good setup for business. And the same thing applies in other areas of life as well. So that's what I really wish parents would help kids to understand from a young age. It's our connectivity.
But I think it's so interesting that free example also illuminates it perfectly that, we all are going to need each other at one point or another. And so we really can't even afford to other another human. So after you got into the career that you wanted, but it sounds like you have a lot of different things going on. So explain how that eventually evolved, if you would.
Yes, it's very true. I've never been able to do just one thing. I find a lot of things very interesting. And so I am an experienced leader in strategy and operations. So in addition to that, though, I also got into teaching at a university. And it was actually because of my passion for leadership. I started with delivering a leadership and practice course. So by the time these master students are taking my course, they've already taken the theory course, the level 1 theory. And now we talk about, okay, the theory is great and it's important, but what do you actually do? How do you actually do leadership? Because leadership, you're faced with a lot of difficulties. So what do you do? So I got into teaching that. And from there, then I was asked to take on another course in terms of career navigation, because I've had a very winding career and learned a lot of things along the way. And so I also teach career navigation. But in addition to all that, I also have a very spiritual and creative side. That creative part of me who was, into artistry earlier on has never gone away. And so I also have a spiritual business. I'm an indie tarot deck creator. So, tarot cards. And I think they're a great reflective tool that people can use for learning and journaling and getting to know themselves better. And I also blog on all things empowerment and growth mindset and leadership alchemy and self-healing.
And you've done some writing, correct?
I have, yes. I have written, I have a piece, technically 4 pieces actually, because I also wrote case studies for them published by a national policy institute in Canada on policy innovation, because I think it's really important that we learn to not only think out of the box, but think about how do we implement creatively? Because sometimes the creative solutions are right in front of us. So that's a topic I have a lot of interest in. So I have some published pieces on that, as well as, I wrote the guidebooks which are very in depth, and there's other authors out there actually in the spiritual sector who I very well respect them, and completely unexpected, they both have many nice things to say about the guidebooks that I've written for those tarot decks. So it means a lot, right? When these authors that I just think the world of, just without my expecting it all, just had such lovely things to say about how well written those guidebooks are.
That is fantastic. Well, congratulations. I mean, it does seem like you came from a situation that wasn't ideal, but you put together a multi-dimensional life that you can be really proud of. And I think probably when you slide through the drive-through and someone reaches out with your meal, you can think quietly or maybe audibly, that thing, this is great, but there's so much more out there too.
Yes. And, and I mean, just to be clear, I have so much respect for people who do work in frontline customer service. It's not easy jobs at all. And, and what I think of are, my heart goes out to people who are feeling stuck by limitations. Yes, lots of the limitations we experience in life are coming at us externally, but let's not internalize any more of that, right? Seek some trauma therapy, seek some counseling, do some personal growth, find accessible ways. Julie Cameron's The Artist's Way is a really accessible way. It's a book. It's a very accessible way for people to get in better touch with themselves in terms of releasing some of those limitations. Because yes, there are external limitations in life, but sometimes then we've put up so many of our own limitations that actually keep us stuck, right? So I acknowledge both, but I think that we always have so much more agency than we may think that we have.
Like that. It's a very good reminder and such a positive note to end on. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on Persistence You. And where can people connect with you and get to know more about you and your work?
Absolutely. So they can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm the only Malumir Logan on LinkedIn. If you want to see, me from my professional perspective, and you can also go to my website, acornandburdock.ca. I do also have leadership writing on there, but at least all of my blog content that I've written is up there.
I love it. That's fantastic. And like me, you are a cat mama, I think.
I
Is that correct?
am. I am. I'm also a Chihuahua mama. But yes, yes. I have a Maine Coon who is almost 18 pounds, and he is 3 times the size of our youngest
What?
cat, who is a little tortie, and she's tiny, but she's bigger than the Chihuahua.
Oh,
We have quite the little furry brood.
Christmas photos in your house must be amazing.
They are adorable. They are adorable.
I've so enjoyed, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was so much fun. What a great start to my day. It is a Monday, and I really enjoyed Malumir. And I think one of the many, well, the snapshot that sticks in my mind is that moment where she leaned out the window at the fast food restaurant and it hit her like a ton of bricks that there was more and she could do more, but it wouldn't be easy. So I really appreciated that story. Anyhow, I hope you all are having a terrific, terrific week. I don't do this too often, but I just want to say for those of you who love movies as much as I do, highly recommend Ghost Flight. That is my movie of the year. I think of all the movies I've seen, and as you know, I go to them once a week, very likely, sometimes more. Ghost Flight is about a family where a horrible, unimaginable tragedy occurred, and it demonstrates each person, the father, the mother, the daughter, their very different reactions to this tragedy. But what's even more interesting, none of these actors are famous. But what I later learned after I finished the movie, and I thought about it, I went with a really good friend of mine who was visiting, but I thought about it for days after. She and I would talk about it on the phone even. It was fabulous to find out that the person who portrayed the father, the mother, and the daughter are in real life a father, a mother, and a daughter. That alone should get you wanting to see it. It is so great. So if you can stream Ghost Light, do, or run to see it at the theaters. So much fun. Hope this summer is going nicely for you. And by the time that this plays, it may be the end of summer or even fall. We shall see. I've been enjoying writing like I haven't in a long time, writing on 2 different projects, just getting ready to wrap one up. This is my novel, my very first novel. And then the other, I continue to make good progress on. Right now, I'm just getting all my artistic well filled. Take good care. Thanks always for sharing, for stopping by. Find me at lameredith.com and go ahead and ask a question or let me know what you're interested in.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence U with Lisbeth.